All right, going live. So I see we have a couple questions coming in. Let me scroll and see who was the first one. Mental concept, coming out of the back and entering the middle. So pretty much just find something that's repeatable. Everybody will be a little bit different. Mine is mostly just make it repeatable and do the same thing that I've rehearsed. And so a lot of that is drills and easy throws, and then trying to have that happen when it counts in the meet. And Megan Clark says, do I have any tips or tricks? And I do not. I get that question a lot, and I do not have really any tricks for shot put. It's just a lot of hard work and and a lot of throws. So what was my PR senior year of high school? So I threw 77 feet 2 inches with the 12-pound shot, and then I threw 237.7 in the discus with 1.6 kilo, and 19 meters 48, I believe it was, 63.10 ish with a 16-pound, and that was probably my best throw for me. I know Jordan Geis came in later and threw farther, but I felt like for my build and strength levels, that was a much better throw, 63.10 or 11 with the 16, than my 77.2 for me. Let's see. Farthest throw I've had in practice. Farthest throw in practice that's a tough one to answer because I throw a lot of different weights. And so I threw, probably my most outstanding throw was 20 meters 20 with a 20-pound. That one's definitely, I feel like, for me, the best throw. And the farthest I've thrown recently would be 24.15 with a 15-pound. So I'm gonna keep my 16-pound top secret. Hopefully I can improve on that 23.37. I will say I have thrown a little bit farther in practice, but I feel like some of my bigger throws have been with different weights than the 16-pound. And did I ever glide? And so yes, I did glide. I threw with the glide starting out. That's the technique I started with, and I stuck with that for all the way from 6th, 7th, 8th grade, freshman, sophomore, junior year. So I threw the glide for quite a while, and I felt like I had a good understanding of it. And technically, I was really proud of my glide technique. I worked on it a lot, and I feel like a lot of people think that it's simple, and I can really tell you as a former glider that it's not. It's not quite as technical as the spin, but it's definitely a lot more than people realize. And so that was a big part of me getting a good finish on the shot. And I think glide is still a relevant technique, especially some of these taller, more athletic kids that might not be quite as strong. The glide lets you it's easier to use your leverage, and if you don't have quite as much time to throw, say you're a football player or a basketball player and you come out and you want to throw, I would definitely recommend that they glide before they go in and try to learn the spin. So the glide is a great learning tool, and you can still throw really far with a glide. I threw in high school over 70 feet. In training, my PR was 72 feet before I got hurt going into my senior year. And so that's about the glide. I ramble a little bit on that. And biggest fish I ever caught. All right, I'll take it that route. For those people that don't know, I love fishing, and that's my favorite hobby that I do in a lot of my free time. I was out fishing 2 days ago. And so biggest fish I ever caught would be probably a sturgeon. So I grew up in Oregon, and we have giant sturgeon there in the Columbia River, and the biggest one I caught was 11 feet and would have been over 600 pounds. And so they're almost 80, 90 years old, and so you can't keep them, you have to let them go. But that's definitely the biggest fish I caught. Biggest bass I've ever caught was in Austin, Texas. It's a great place to bass fish, and I was lucky enough to catch a 13-pound bass there. And caught some 10-pound bass in San Diego. Have not got one in Arkansas yet. My biggest in Arkansas is a 9.3-pound bass, and so I'm hoping for that double-digit bass here in Arkansas. But yeah, so I'm competitive in bass fishing, just like in throwing. I have all my PBs for bass fishing and fishing in tournaments as well. So it's definitely a hobby of mine. And let's move on. Let's see, next question. So why did I choose shot and not discus? And so a little bit for me, combination of two things. So number one is in 2016, I only had an indoor eligibility with the University of Texas. I had redshirted indoors, but not outdoors. So in 2016, I only had an indoor. And so for those people that know the NCAA system, there's only shot and weight. I'm not really a weight throw guy. So I threw the shot indoors and started to throw outdoors a little bit. That's when I would start throwing discus, but I had a big breakthrough, tied the NCAA record that was Ryan Whiting's through 21.73, and that put me at a pretty competitive level internationally. And there's not a lot of time to transition from indoor season to outdoor in the Olympic trials. And looking at the list, I figured if I could throw my PR at the Olympic trials, which is kind of the goal at the time being 21.73, that would most likely make the team. And my discus throw was 63.90 going in. And if I threw a PR at the trials and threw more than 63.90, I still needed 65 meters at the time to get the Olympic standard. So I threw with shot just because I thought it would give me a better chance to make the Olympic team. And that's kind of why I have stuck with it. And the shot for me, I've always had a little bit better feel for the shot. It's not easier for me, but I had less bad days. My discus, I'd have a really good day throwing and then a really bad day. And then with shot, just day in and day out, I tend to have more consistency and just a better feeling for the throw. So what lifts helped me in high school discus? So as far as lifting in high school, it varies a lot individual to individual. You have some kids that have been lifting for years at that point and some kids that are just starting to lift. And so high school discus, I would say the main thing is work on throwing, and don't get too involved in the weight room. It's easier to work on technique and develop a feel before you're just killing yourself in the weight room. So if you want to lift, that's great, but really kind of measure it out and don't do too much. I would say just do some Olympic lifts, more work on technique in the Olympic lifts as well. They're a technical event or a technical movement, and you can get injured if you don't do it well. So learn to lift right in high school is the main thing. And so cleans or snatches, both are really good. And bench and squat are kind of the primaries that you need to focus on. There's some auxiliary lifts you can do a little bit of just to stay healthy, like back hypers, make sure you do some core and stuff, but just focus on really those lifts. And it could be as simple as when I was in high school, I did like 5 sets of 5, and then before the season, and then in the season I did 5 sets of 3. And one day I would do an Olympic lift, and then I would do bench, and then I would do a squat. And so that was really a simple program and really straightforward. But it worked for me, and I was a very technical thrower. Wasn't that strong, and I wasn't that heavy. By my senior year, I was 6'7", but I only weighed 220 pounds, so 100 kilos. So that's pretty skinny for a discus thrower. And but I was really technique oriented, and I was proud of my technique. And so that was kind of a key to success. So surgeon, have I ever had a mental block? And yeah, so that's any athlete, I feel like at any level at some point has had some type of mental block. It varies a lot, but I have definitely have had mental blocks, and I've almost more than a block. I would say it's like a slump. You have days that you just can't seem to throw the shot far. You can't seem to do whatever you want to do well. And so the main thing that I've found for getting out of slumps or mental blocks is try to do something right. So if I'm having a really bad day and it's like I can't do anything right, I can't throw well, everything's struggling, it might have been going for not even just one practice but a whole week or two, try to do something right. So I might just go back to the simplest stand throw or the simplest drill, and then the only thing I'm going to focus on is doing that one thing right. And that's the key to kind of pulling yourself out of that, is do one thing right, and then once you do one, even if it's the simplest thing right, it's a lot easier to do that next thing right, and then keep building on that to kind of get yourself out of that slump. All right, next question. So PR PRs as a freshman in high school. So as a freshman in high school, I was playing a lot of basketball, and I was really skinny. So I was 6'2"-ish. So I was tall, but I was 170 pounds. So I was built more like a high jumper or a long jumper than I was like a thrower. And so I actually did triple jump as well. Jumped 43 feet in the triple. So a pretty respectable mark for a triple jumper. Shot, I threw 60 feet 2 inches at the state meet. My goal was to get 60 feet, so I got that. And my goal was 180 feet in the discus, and I threw 180 feet 3 inches. And so I set my goals really high, because I started the season out, I think I threw 160 in the discus and 53 in the shot. And so throughout the season, I progressed a lot. And at that point in my life, I mean, 15 years old, you're growing a lot, your body's developing a lot. So I felt like I set my goals high, and I was just a goofy, tall, gangly kid. And so it was a lot easier to improve than it is now, just because I'm throwing at a much higher level now. How do you calm your nerves going into a big competition? So that's a great question. And it definitely is something that is a little bit different for each person. So for what works for me is, before the competition even happens, I'm talking weeks or months in advance, it all starts in training. So it's really easy to go into a big competition, like for me at the trials, if you've done everything you can to prepare. So if you've done everything you can to the best of your ability, if your sleep has been good, your nutrition's been good, your training's been good, and you've been really dedicated, if you have done everything right going into the big meet, it makes it a lot easier to perform well, because you can go in knowing I couldn't have done anything better. So that's my number one key to calming my nerves, is do everything you can going in, and then you can have a really just clear mind and know, hey, I did everything to the best of my ability to get ready. So no matter what happens, I couldn't have done better. And that makes it a lot easier to perform well. Should I throw a heavier shot in practice than the competition weight? And in general, I would say yes, but up to a point. So heavy shots can be good, just like light shots can be good. I think for younger athletes, so a lot of people disagree with me on this, but I think light shots are more beneficial to younger athletes. And the main reason is, if you want to throw far, you have to throw far. And it's a lot easier to do that with the light ball. So say you're a 50-foot shot putter and you want to throw 55. The key to throwing 55 is feeling what that feels like. And so if you're throwing a 12-pound shot in high school, it might be going down to a 10-pound and throwing 55 repeatedly, and then you get used to that new feeling. And so that's kind of what I think a lot of younger athletes underutilize, is the light ball. Heavy can be a good training tool. I would say use that earlier in the season when you want to build. It's great for building specific strength, and it makes the comp ball feel lighter, but it also doesn't necessarily make you throw that much farther later in the season when you're trying to work more on speed and being more athletic. So if you're going to use the comp ball, I would say use it limited. Use it on the simpler movement. So it might be the just fronts, flips, or stand throws, or maybe work on it on full. But as I get closer to full, I use closer to the light ball. So I'll do just wrist flips and stands with up to a 24. But as soon as I start to put in some movement into it, I don't go heavier than a 20. And even that, I stopped throwing the 20 at January 1st. So I spent very little time relative to the season throwing the heavy ball. So I would say for you younger kids, really focus on the light ball and learn to throw far before you start trying to throw the heavy ball and develop more of that specific strength. Next top question is, have you ever thought about trying out for the NFL? So a little bit. I've had some interest. When I was at Texas in school, they definitely asked me to play a few times. And even post-collegiately, I've had a little bit of interest from the NFL, just offers saying, hey, if you want to come try out, we'd love to have you. Because obviously I have a good build for football. 6'7", I'm about 325 right now. And you know, I hit those bench press reps at 225 pounds. I think I did 40 something a couple of years ago, the one day I tried it. So maybe we could get 50 now, maybe even a few more than that. So I have good combine numbers, 36-inch vertical, and I got right around 11 foot standing broad. So pretty good for kind of being on the heavier side. That was just a difficult meet. I felt like I didn't perform well on the day, except for the one throw that I had.